Hi, I'm Jill Lavetsky. I'm a teaching artist at the Norton Museum of Art. I'm also a professional artist, and I focus mainly in painting, drawing, and printmaking. Thanks for joining me in my studio. Today we're going to make something called a story quilt, inspired by an artist named Faith Ringgold. We'll use materials easily found at home, and we'll make paper quilts. We have a work of art by Faith Ringgold in the Norton Museum's collection called Moroccan Holiday, made in 1997, which is one work from her series she called The French Collection Part 2. Who do you think the people in the work of art could be? Why do you think that? What story do you think the artist is trying to tell? You're welcome to pause the video if you need more time to respond to these questions. Many artworks tell a story or narrative. Faith Ringgold is an African-American artist who paints her stories on fabric and calls them story quilts. Quilts have a long history in many cultures around the world and are often pieces of fabric that have been sewn together in a couple layers. I am a beginner quilt maker, but this is one that I had made for my daughter when I was pregnant with her. Quilts are blankets, but they can be so much more than that. Faith Ringgold was born in Harlem, New York in 1930, and she grew up hearing stories about slavery and about the legacies of the Harlem Renaissance and about segregated schools, and she pulled all of that into her visual art. Her biggest role model was her mother, who was a fashion designer and a dressmaker, and she got her into quilt making and taught her how to sew. Faith Ringgold's own great-great-great-grandmother, who was enslaved, also created quilts to tell stories. Although the stories that Ringgold tells in her work are fictional, they're loosely based on her own and her family's lives. In this piece, she paints a character named William Marie Simone, having a conversation with her daughter Marlena. Their dialogue is written in small writing all around the edges. They sit in Willia's art studio in front of 4 large portraits of historic black male icons. From left to right, Frederick Douglass, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and the scene is surrounded by a decorative border made up of thin strips of floral fabric. In their conversation, the 2 women have an emotional discussion about the choices William Marie has made during her life, in terms of her roles as an artist, a mother, a woman, and an African American. They talk about the opportunities available to men versus women and express many of the issues that Ringgold is concerned with in her work. Okay, so to make our quilt, we are going to make paper quilts. So we'll need 1 piece of paper to be the base of the quilt. And then for background, we can use some colored sheets of paper like construction paper. To make our characters, we're going to want to draw them. So you'll want more sheets of paper, just copy paper is fine. And then to draw, you can use markers or colored pencils or crayons, whatever you have, and a pencil and an eraser to draw. And then for our decorative border, we're gonna just find things around the house to collage. So you can find old calendars, magazines, even postcards. You can use gift bags to cut up. You can also use file folders that you're not using anymore, or you can use gift wrap. And we'll use those things for a decorative border. And I find it's kind of fun to go searching through your house to see what kinds of fun things you can find. Now for the story on our quilt, we are going to make some characters. So Faith Ringgold in Moroccan Holiday told her story through her alter ego, Willia. Willia was an artist just like Ringgold, but she could go to the past and meet famous people, and she could do things that Ringgold never dreamed of doing. So an alter ego is like a version of ourselves. It can be very similar to ourselves or kind of different. So take a moment and think about the artwork you just saw and take some time to write about who an alter ego for yourself would be. Who are they? What do they do? Where are they from? What's important to them? You can feel free to pause the video as you write. Okay, so after you're done writing about your alter ego character, you can begin to draw. If drawing people isn't your thing, you can draw objects that represent your character or simple symbols. So for mine, I wanted to tell a story about my home state of Florida. So my character here travels only by canoe with her daughter in the swamps of Florida, and here's an alligator to represent the state. She also gets to meet people that I admire from Florida's history. So Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote my favorite book of all time, Their Eyes Are Watching God, and also Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, who wrote and advocated for the Everglades. So for these, I drew them out in pencil, and then I went over them with marker and colored them in with one color each, with colored pencils and with crayons. So we'll take our characters and collage them into our quilt. Okay, so before we collage our story into our quilt, we first need to create a background. So I have cut out some magazine images that remind me kind of swampy for my own story, and I'm going to arrange them down for the background into kind of a patchwork look. So now I'm going to glue down my characters onto my background. I'll arrange them first to see a composition I could create, and then I'll glue. Again, I'm going to make a decorative border around the edge, so I'm going to leave some of that space. And then I'll glue down my characters. So Faith Ringgold in her piece had included the text and the dialogue all around the edges. So maybe you could include some of the story that you wrote if you wanted to add words, or you could cut out words or phrases from a magazine that relate to the story that you're trying to tell. So I'm going to glue a few more pieces of text around my piece. So for the decorative border around my piece, I'm going to use some of this gift wrap that I found and this gift bag and also this old calendar to cut up as my border. Okay, so this is my story quilt. So if Faith Ringgold can tell her story through fictional characters in her quilts, what other ways can artists tell stories in their art? And what other ways can you tell your stories in your art? Please share your art with us. You can tag hashtag Norton from home on Facebook or Instagram so we can see your creativity in your quilts. And I'll leave you with a quote from Faith Ringgold. She says, "We must speak, or our ideas and ourselves will remain unheard and unknown." Thanks for making art with me today.